Oh, that's a nice car, bro.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, it's a manual and everything.
Oh, no 8HP then.
What do you mean? Manuals are still cool, right?
Yeah.
Not
I'm
putting
planning an
8 HP in it like
8HP
your wish,
substitute.
But oh, I can't take it anymore. I gotta get rid of this thing. Dad, we should put an 8 HP in the 300ZX. What's that? Welcome back to Turbo Go-Go, everybody. This is my mum's Nissan 300ZX that Dad built for her about a year ago. It's got an RB3025 with twin turbos. It handles great and it has plenty of power, but the manual transmission and clutch combo that we have just isn't quite right for her for the daily driving application that it was meant for. So after a trip to Warwick Dragway and shearing off a stub axle, we decided that it was time to go with the latest buzzword and throw an 8 HP in it. Right, Dad, so why'd you decide to go with the 8 HP and what do you need for it?
As you mentioned, the manual transmission and clutch isn't super nice to drive. It's fine for me to drive, or you, or whatever, if you're allowed to. But it's to hold the power that this engine makes. The clutch needs to be quite aggressive, and I have already replaced the clutch from a really aggressive single plate to the twin plate uni clutch that's in it now, and it's way better, but it's still not mum spec. And also when we did the road trip drag challenge in it and got stuck in a traffic jam for about an hour because some tradies ran into each other, and I had to put the clutch in and out about 4 million times, my kneecap nearly exploded because the pedal load is very high on it. So it's not super pleasant to drive for long, just in traffic basically. And that wasn't the goal of the car. We sort of derailed the idea. We should have just put an automatic in the first place, but we sort of derailed it in our own heads just because having a manual RB3025 with twin turbos is cool, which it is, but it's not quite right for what we're after. And these 8 HP things, everybody is raving about them all the time, and I'm sure everybody's heard about them. It's a very common transmission that's fitted to most BMWs and heaps of other cars as well. So it's not a BMW specific gearbox, although a lot of the adapter kits are for BMW trans, but it's a very widely used transmission. And also a lot of the other transmissions that other manufacturers make are kind of made off this design, which is from ZF in Germany, or ZF if you must. So it's a bit of a winner, and with these aftermarket control systems that we've got now, you can do crazy stuff with them. And of course it all takes time to tune and make things work, but it's possible to do some ridiculous things with this automatic transmission that makes it behave like a manual or be trans braked and just everything. So it's a pretty good thing. It's expensive though in a lot of cases. We've actually gone with the cheap gearbox, which is in this case is an 8 HP 50, which is obviously a less torque rating. It's actually a smaller gearbox altogether. So there's 8 HP 45, which is real common in all the BMWs. This is the upgraded version of that, and then you've got 70s and 90s and a few variants of those. The 70 and the 90 are bigger than this. It's an 8 HP, but it's actually bigger. The whole gearbox is bigger, so they are pretty indestructible, but they're also physically a lot bigger and a lot more expensive. So it it does make them difficult to fit into vehicles with small tunnels. So we don't have a huge amount of power. It's it's plenty powerful enough. It's a fun car to drive, and we're not planning on making any more power with it. It can have less, but really, like I've never really used the top boost level because you don't need it. So I've gone with this 50 because it's really cheap. This is about $2,000 just from a wrecker on eBay. Obviously, that's not the whole story though. That $2,000 gearbox is not going to fit into the car. You need a lot of other stuff to make it fit, which is where we've gone with local guys 8speed.au, which is Andrew is a mate of mine. I think there's more than Andrew involved in it, but I'm just going to talk about Andrew because that's who I've dealt with. He's been sort of commercializing the idea of 8 speeds for a couple of years now, and they've done heaps of conversions on various vehicles. So they've got a lot of stock. The stuff itself, some of it is locally made, but a lot of it, this stuff's come from Sweden. Those Swedes are pretty smart chaps. It's like the Australia of Europe. So it's Dommy Works is a lot of the hard parts that we've got. So the adapter plate here, which is like a billet aluminium adapter plate, a flywheel or flex plate, which is also I guess it's like chromoly or something like that. Heaps of other little bits and pieces. Comes with everything. That's your output shaft adapter that it converts it over to a uni joint, so we can then convert the tail shaft over. This is the ECU or the TCU that controls it. It's called a turbo Lemic. Most people who've had anything to do with 8HP or read anything will know that is the way to go if you want full control over the transmission. There are other options. Max ECU, the ECU company also from Sweden, will control this transmission via CAN, and there's another company called CAN TCU which also controls it via CAN. And what that means is the transmission computer is actually inside the gearbox. It's still in there at the moment. We're going to remove it so we can use that to control it instead. But you can just leave that transmission computer in there, and basically you plug in a CAN TCU or use a Max ECU, and it will communicate with that transmission computer as if it was a BMW or Dodge or whatever engine computer. So it's giving it the things it needs to control the transmission properly, and it still thinks it's in the car that it was in. So that's great. It's very simple, but the only problem with that is you do miss out on features like the Turbo Lemic has like virtual clutches. You can have a potentiometer clutch and it'll act like you're kicking the clutch when you're drifting, or trans brake and that sort of thing. There's a lot of stuff you can do. So that's more complicated to fit, but it gives you a lot more control over it. So we've gone with that because, as you know, Mum definitely needs a trans brake in her car so she can go down the shops.
Absolutely. Can get it on the chip.
Probably.
I get all this stuff, Dad. What the hell is this thing?
Oh yeah, this is that's actually a transmission mount that Golbies have designed. They got CNC machines and stuff now, so they're getting stuck into some really cool design work, and it looks pretty weird. This obviously bolts onto the back of the trans, like so, but you can see it's all wonky and crooked and doesn't look right. It's actually an adjustable mount, so you've got this adjustment. These screw in and out to get your heights changed, and this offset's different, so you can screw it right out and flip it over, so that gives you more or less height. So it makes it easier for us to adapt it to a car like this where there's no commercially available mount. A lot of the cars, they have already designed mounts for them, like, you know, Supras and Silvias and stuff that's real common, but they're probably not one for this, and especially not one for this that's got the wrong engine in it altogether anyway. So that's going to be a cool thing to test out. And I forgot about this thing too. That's the factory shifter. So it doesn't shift anything. It's just basically a lever that that controls things, and LEDs come on, and this is connected to the CAN circuit, so it's got a plug in it that goes through into the ECU, and all your shifting and park and everything is all done electronically. This actually doesn't control anything apart from you commanding it. That's why some cars like Dodge Rams and that have got just a dial, because nothing's connected. It's all by wire. Pretty cool.
All right, Dad, we got all the bits. What's the process now?
We probably don't have all the bits, but we'll get to that when we start fitting it. So what we're going to do is just pull the gearbox out, clutch off, flywheel off, tail shaft, clutch pedal, shifter, everything, master cylinder, all that's related to the manual trans is going to come out. We've got a plan for that, so we're not throwing it away. We've got a master plan for another project vehicle that's coming up. So we'll put that to the side under the bench, and we'll start by obviously fitting the adapter plate and then test fit the gearbox, because we don't know whether it's going to fit or not. It's the same as everything. That engine is obviously heavily recessed into the firewall, so we might have to trim some stuff. I'd say these big lumps are all going to have to come off the side of the gearbox. That sounds like seems like most people have to do that when they're doing conversions, but we won't know till we find out. So we'll just start spinning spanners, as they say, see what happens.
Hell yeah, let's get into it. So we've got both the boxes out now. Dimensionally, they look pretty similar, which is nice. And we have put the adapter plate on now. It looks like we're going to have to do some clearancing, not only on all these stubs, but to make the starter motor fit here as well. And one other really good thing is, with the twin plate clutch, which sticks out really far, plus the input shaft, we needed a lot of angle, and it made it quite difficult to get the gearbox in and out, but because there's just a converter, we can basically bring it straight up flush, which is going to make life a lot easier. We spent the morning cutting off these casting chunks here to try and make some room when this gearbox goes up into the tunnel. And we also have cleared that little area for the end of the starter motor there, because originally on the BMW gearbox they're down here, but we had to move it up here. And Dad's just knocked that bit out there. We've attached the adapter plate on now. Now we're going to take it off, stick it on the engine, and see if we can squeeze the gearbox up there.
What's that red thing?
This little bit here is for this adapter plate, which it can incorporate a KA engine as well. Now the dowels are slightly in different areas for the KA and RB, so you can throw that in there to slip it onto the engine and make it work.
This is the bit where we get to find out whether I have to remake this whole shit show here. Fingers crossed. We've almost got the box mated up to the adapter plate or the engine, but obviously this is never going to work because the box is a bit longer than it was before, and that used to be curling around into the center muffler. So we're going to have to just take this off. The good news is that there's heaps of room for these actual pairs of pipes, which are not easy to make, so I'm glad I don't have to make them again. All we'll do is lop that off there and then redo it up here further, and should be fine. We might have to get rid of the center muffler though, because of how much longer it is, but it's kind of a bit quiet anyway, so that'll be okay. We'll just put a little resonator in there instead. The biggest drama we've probably got so far is that I have to have the hoist about this height, otherwise I can't reach anything. And Gus keeps caving his head in on the hoist arms because he's a foot taller than me. So, I don't know, too much Wheaties for Gus when he was young.
Gearbox is up in the tunnel, Dad. What's next?
The box went in okay. It's definitely no more difficult than the manual box, which is difficult. But I've made the whole sort of front cross member, engine support and everything with big long studs, so you can drop it down because you just can't get it in otherwise due to the fact that it's not meant to have an RB in it. So we just did that same process. It all bolted up really nice. The Dommy Works kit is extremely accurate. It's one of the best sort of billet things I've ever dealt with. Billet does not mean that it fits. It just means that it's made with a machine that someone programmed. So now we do need to get the gearbox up a little bit higher. There's a big sort of center rib down from the bell housing that's contacting the floor. So we're going to have to come back out and give that some panel beating. It's at about 3 degrees now, which is actually okay from a driveline point of view, but it was previously about 1, so we want to bring it back to that because it was working really well at 1 degree. There was no vibrations or anything like that. So that'll come back out, and we'll try our best with the biggest hammer we can find. The other thing we got to do is obviously make a transmission mount, which is going to happen after we get the gearbox sitting in the right spot. And to do that, we've got this Golby's, it's a universal 8HP transmission mount, and it's adjustable. This is a prototype. We were given this to try because they've used them obviously on their own vehicles, but when you're making products for the public, it's best to get them out there and let other people use them. So we're using it as a test, and we have actually given them a bit of feedback about it. The way that they had designed it to lock these up is with a grub screw, and we were like, oh, it might not be the best way of doing it just because it might, well, it will damage the actual thread when you screw it in, which doesn't really matter because it's assumed that once you've put it in there, you're gonna make your cross member and everything's good, and then you lock it up at the last point. That stops it from spinning. But we've had a little discussion with them and back and forwards, and they've just modified the design to make it so this will actually have a slit in it and a big locking bolt here, which will clamp the whole this area here down onto this and lock it up that way. So bit of back and forward, that's what it's all about. Feedback for the parts, so when you guys go to the store to buy it, it's going to be right. These will be available in the next couple of weeks. They just got a batch of them made, but they've got to go through the anodizing process and that sort of thing. So keep an eye on the Golby's site for that. Next, we're just going to pull the box out and get a big hammer.
Why's the converter on the bench, Dad?
Well, little story. So we've done a bit of tunnel clearancing. I got the old sledgy out and give it a little massage. I think we'll be right there. And Gus has done some trimming on the case is covered in ribs, so he's just trimmed down some ribs and stuff. I think we'll be okay there. We'll get it up enough to get the angles pretty good. But in the meantime, I noticed when we bolted it in there, it bolted in nicely, but I tried pulling the converter forward into the like to mate up to the flex plate, which is obviously got to happen. You need a bit of setback. I've talked about setback a lot of times over the years. It's very important that you have a converter setback. So when it's seated back in the transmission, it needs to come forward about 3-4 mil. That's to allow for expansion and that sort of thing. And I noticed that I couldn't pull the converter forward. It would still spin, but I couldn't get it forward. So once we got the transmission out, I did some measurements, basic measurements with just a steel rule and whatever, another ruler or a vernier. And the measurements didn't add up to what I measured on the back of the engine. So I then pulled the converter out, which I didn't really want to do because then you've got to deal with putting it back in again, and put it up against the flex plate, and it won't mate up. So this is stopping it, which is the converter, like the pilot guide for the middle of the converter, keeps it all centric to the driveline. So I got onto Andrew at 8-speed and said, "Oh, have you had any of these problems? Because this transmission may not be the one that everybody's using. It's an 8HP 50 from a B48, which is like a 4-cylinder turbo, brother of the B58, which is what's in Supras and lots of BMWs that I don't know about. So he had a bit of a look around, grabbed a couple of different converters and stuff that they got there, and measured this. And this little, we just call it the dick, because why not? The dick height is a little bit different. It's probably 5 mil longer than some of the other ones. So that's just something you've got to be aware of. Just because that bell housing's the same, there's a lot of different converters and there's a lot of different engines that the transmission could come from. So it pays to measure things up. If you try and pull a gearbox in when that's touching the end of the crankshaft, it's going to punch the inside of the gearbox out and the gearbox will be junk. So lucky we caught that. In this case, I'm just going to cut the tapered part of this dick off because it has no real purpose. It's just a guide to make sure it goes in there nicely and doesn't bind up. So I'm just going to cut it back. This bit here is the only bit that actually does anything. The little probably 3 mil there. So as long as that stays, it'll be fine. We'll get stuck into that and then give it a test fit. I'm going to give Andrew a call back and let him know whether that's the fix or not, because then he can let anyone else know that if they've got one of these gearboxes, that's what you need to do. And it all adds to the knowledge base, so when people do try and do this, they do get a good result.
We test fitted the mushroom head after Dad trimmed it down a little bit, and unfortunately it's still contacting the crankcase. So the next best thing is, with the flywheel on here, we've decided to cut the mushroom head off completely, and that stub is just concentric with the converter, so we're going to make a sleeve that just slots in and guides the flywheel and the converter together. Using our lathe, Dad has taken the mushroom head we had left over and drilled a 20 mil hole down through the middle with a little step, and it's just sitting here on top of the stub now. He's going to TIG weld it on there and it'll be there as our concentric spacer. The crew Dad has been speaking to, 8-speed AU, they are looking into a spacer for the kit now as well, because with stuff like this that hasn't been done before, there's a bit of trial and error for that. So we've let them know. It's been really cool doing some cutting and grinding and pulling gearboxes in and out and just working through problems with Dad, seeing how he does it. And in the next one, we're going to be pulling the 8HP apart and working with the turbo Lamech, and we'll find out how that works in the next one. Thank you all for watching. This has been Turbo Grogu.
That was good until he started laughing.
I just stared straight at the camera.
What are you doing?
I'm trying to work out what to say.